So we'll move right into the Q&A segment. And I want to encourage you guys to send your questions in the chat or raise your hand if you want to ask a question. I want to also invite Darcy to join in the Q&A segment. So you can send messages to him or any of our other presenters that just went, or you can send a general message and just ask for anyone to give comments if they have any. So I'll wait to see if anyone will raise their hand or send a question in the chat.
If I can sneak a question in,
Definitely.
I'll try to for a bit. I apologize, because I'm still going to leave time for the others. But basically, I wanted to know, so I love that you all have mapped and been following the pervasive marketing, but I think what you would find, and what I think would be the challenge for myself, other youth advocates, and probably the government, is that these corporations offer valuable financing for opportunities for youth, children, vulnerable communities. So they sponsor scholarships, they sponsor sporting events. I want to know, one, how deep and pervasive have you found that type of financing to be and that type of marketing to be? And that's a side we don't see. You don't see them out front sometimes saying, we're financing a scholarship, but it's the underbelly of the system. How pervasive have you found that to be in your research, one? And then what do you think we could do to counteract that type of marketing or that type of tactic? Do we say, well, you could fund it or you could support it, but you don't have to publicize it. You don't have to get anything from the children because of it. You don't have to be allowed to market your things in schools because of it. So those two questions, how pervasive is it? And two, how do you think we can combat it if we can?
I can maybe start, get the ball rolling, because I think we all have some experiences to contribute. But Pierre, I think from just our examples that we shared today, it is quite pervasive. I think one of the challenges that we have in the Caribbean, and I know this is something that we often talk about, is this right to transparency. And that's something that we're actively working on, because we need to know what's happening between private and public sector. And right now, a lot of our countries don't have the regulations in place so that we as civil society, as advocates, can access to that. So in our ongoing advocacy, I think that that's super important for us to consider. I'm not sure if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
So, no, I'll allow like an actual presenter to go, but I think just because it's so pervasive in the Caribbean, and it's something that we at Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network are also looking to get more information on, just like, this relationship that the public and private sector that they have, because there are also incentives for schools if they're able to sell a certain amount of a product. And then these incentives that could be, for example, refrigerators or like a bus for the school sports team, it would have branding on it as well. So, it's this incentive to sell the product and then further advertising that encourages the brand loyalty around the product. So, yeah, but I'm not sure who exactly was about to speak, but you can go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem at all, Sharika. Well, I was also going to say that very pervasive, Ned, and companies know that. And they are very powerful, especially in low and middle countries, such as in Latin America or Central America as well. But we need to counteract it, because when we even see the economic or the resources that they are giving, they receive a lot more in the contrary with this close relationship with consumers, the loyalty with consumers, but also they have a huge negative economic impact into the countries because of all the negative health impacts of the consumer, of the consumption of their products. So I think we really need to reinforce those arguments. We have studies that demonstrate how negative, an economic negative impact we have because of this whole negative and unhealthy food environment that we are living. So we really need to do so, but in the short term, it may seem like a good idea, but it's not.
And if I could jump in there, I really like how Camilla brought that home, because it is, I think we often, there's a reason why these companies are doing these sort of marketing techniques, especially like if you're talking about like scholarships, and it's in why they would want to blue wash or whatever other kind of wash they would want to do to kind of cover up their tracks. There's a completely separate from UNICEF, but in grad school there was a college at Cambridge that was still accepting money from BP oil and gas to fund a student studying climate change or climate crisis. And then Extinction Rebellion just shut it down. It came out like the college said it was divesting, and then they announced that they were going to have this scholarship, a BP scholarship to any student who's going to be dedicated to like green energy or something. And Extinction Rebellion came and like changed themselves in front of the building. And the argument was, well, like you could have opened the door to someone studying this important technology, but then everyone else was like, well, the bigger picture is that BP is going to be able to greenwash what they've done, and no accountability will be held. So I think it's for us to lift up or remove the mask from the alternative motives that a lot of these companies have, and to speak truth to power, and to think about the long term. And yeah, so that's my contribution to that one part. But it is really frustrating because in the short term they could be offering some great opportunities. In the long term, it just makes the problem so much worse for the same communities that they're supposedly trying to help.
Okay, we have another question in the chat. So Stephanie is asking, how do you think we can... Oh, I'm sorry, Claudia, did you have a comment on the last?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the cost element. I just wanted to say that, even in our advocacy efforts, perhaps we have to focus more on the cost of inaction, on like the costs on lives lost, and to frame it more like that, to inspire sort of policymakers to act, but also, we know that we need to galvanize not just political support, but also focusing on the public and making sure that the rest of the public understand this issue the way that we are now seeing it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Stephanie Whiteman is asking, how do you think, and this is for anyone on the panel, how do you think we can address or encourage social media influencers to stay away from unhealthy food sponsorship? For platforms like Instagram and TikTok, social media influencers have a lot of weight in influencing preferences and trends. So how do we address that?
Cancel them. No, I'm kidding. But do you see young IG or TikTok influencers out there like promoting tobacco like they used to? Not really. Do you see them out here promoting like gas? No. Like it's our job as advocates and youth advocates to make junk food companies the next villain and the next taboo thing that, like, oh, I don't want to be associated with this. Like this is like their tactics are really like exploitative and not cool, and it's gonna make me look really ignorant. But it's the chicken before the egg thing, which is hard. But I think as time will come, if we do our jobs as advocates, it will become really not PC to be a brand spokesman for McDonald's, and that should be like a big issue.
Okay, Claudia, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, from my experiences with social media, I think more and more now I'm seeing a lot of positive sort of health influencers who are, promoting kind of active lifestyle, healthy food products, and even their own recipes, etc. And I think if we can make sure that they're outshining the negative influences, then we can inspire change that way as well. But yeah, I think, luckily I don't see any influencers who are promoting or actively sharing like, KFC or McDonald's and things like that. But yeah.
Okay, and Camilla, you can jump in with your comment.
Okay, well, I was going to go with the same path of Darcy as well and Claudia, because, well, some influencers don't know or are triggered by nutri-washing or health washing or sustainable washing or greenwashing. But I think regulation is so necessary. And I think we need to go both ways. So we need to advance as we made through tobacco, that showing that this is not, that this is an unhealthy commodity. So we need to reinforce this in food and beverage, and it's a little bit more complex, but we already have the ultra processed concept that helps a lot, but we also need regulation. So I think someone mentioned disclosure in the chat, and I think this should be also the case.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Really, really good point. So there are some other questions in the chat, but because of time, we'll answer them in the chat. So if I can just ask the presenters to, take the questions in the chat, that would be great. But I think one of the main takeaways from this session is that we really have to be aware of the examples and then be willing as advocates to go into these same areas to advocate for the change that we do want. So thanks to all the presenters and thanks to everyone.